Hello, this is Joel Slaughter, and I just got done watching the St. Louis Cardinals versus Milwaukee Brewers baseball game. In my blog post, I will be talking about the facility, and in this video, I will be talking about the event, and we'll be answering three questions about this baseball game. The first one is what the planning considerations that I identified were. The second one is the potential risks and how they were treated, and then the third one is what I would change if I were put in charge of this event. So to start right off with the planning considerations, there were two main considerations that I came up with. The first one was the staffing for the food. Now, I thought it particularly interesting that the St. Louis Cardinals decided not to outsource their food, but provided it themselves, and therefore made themselves liable for any food-related risks or injuries that might come about from it. The second part of the planning considerations that I particularly took note of were the ticketing. Now, quite an interesting story happened with me in the ticketing, because when I went through the ticket line, they also searched people's bags for security reasons, and they told me that my backpack was not allowed to be brought in. And they told me that what I would have to do is I would have to go across the street to a store and get a clear plastic bag because that is the only thing that they would allow in. But they also said that if I took everything out of my backpack and rolled it up, that I could put it into a bag and that I would therefore be able to get it in. So I went and did that. The only problem was that the bag that I got from the store wasn't a clear plastic bag. It was actually not see-through, and so I put everything from my backpack into that bag and put it through. And they ended up having to search it because it wasn't see-through, and so it really was no different than what a backpack would have been. And I put my backpack into another bag and sent it through. So it was really a confusing and redundant policy that didn't make much sense. It seems like if you're allowed to take a bag in with just as much stuff as a backpack in it and it's not see-through, then why not just allow people to bring backpacks in but require them to be searched, much like convocation security at Liberty University. So that actually answers both the questions of what the planning considerations for the event were and what I would do to change it, is that I would allow backpacks to be brought in as long as they were searched thoroughly. And finally, what I'd like to talk about is the potential risks and how they were treated. Now, there were two main potential risks that I saw during the game. The first one is the risk of getting hit by a ball. Where I was sitting was in the outfield, pretty much right down the line from home plate, and so I believe there were 2 home runs in that game that were scored in my general area. And as I did not bring a glove, the risk of getting hit by a ball was relatively high. It's inherent with every baseball game, and I thought it interesting that in the section where I was sitting, they had actually erected a fence right where the wall was to try to make sure that no one sitting in the very front would get hit. And it was actually interesting because that fence actually repelled a ball back onto the field. That was a home run, and the referees had to review it for probably 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure that the ball did actually go past the wall and that it didn't hit the wall and came back, but that it actually hit the fence. So that was one safety policy that definitely came into play during the event. And the second one was the risk of getting sunburned. Now, I actually did get sunburned this game as I haven't been out much this year. And obviously what I could have done is I could have brought sunscreen, but the risk of getting sunburned is also something that the stadium could have thought of and made some seats with shade. But as I looked around the stadium, there were almost no seats with shade in them. There were only maybe 1 or 2 overhangs that provided a little bit of shade. And as this game started at noon, the sun was quite hot, and I thought that the stadium could have done something to maybe reduce the risk of the sun, maybe even as drastic as building a roof over the stadium, but as small as maybe setting up umbrellas or providing more shaded seats with overhangs over them, to try to reduce the risk of getting sunburned. So overall, I was pretty happy with this event. There were a few things that I noted about it that probably could have been done better. But I thought that the overall planning considerations were pretty good, and definitely some steps were taken to mitigate potential risks. So So I was happy with the event and I had a very great time watching baseball.